The chair was empty. Clara's mop stopped mid-stroke. She'd checked it 4 minutes ago. Amara had been asleep in it, jacket pulled up, head dropped to one side, the boneless sleep of a child who had stopped fighting it. 4 minutes. Clara had mopped the length of the east corridor and come back, and the chair was empty and the break room door was open. She didn't run. Running made noise. Noise brought attention. She moved fast. Bathroom empty. Alcove near the vending machine empty. And then at the end of the corridor, room 714. The door was open, just enough. Clara pushed it. Amara was on the edge of the bed, both small hands wrapped around the hand of the man lying motionless against the pillow, talking to him, calm, quiet, the way she talked to her stuffed rabbit at home, like the conversation mattered and she intended to finish it. Amara, barely anything. Amara turned. Hi, Mama. Come here, right now. I'm just talking to him. Amara. He looks lonely. Clara crossed the room in 4 steps and lifted her daughter off the bed and held her too tight and made herself loosen the grip. Because Amara didn't know what she'd done. Amara was 4 years old and had walked into a restricted room belonging to a man whose door had 2 guards outside it, and whose chart existed under a false name, and whose doctors spoke about him like they were already writing his eulogy. She carried her out, crouched in the hallway, looked her in the eyes. You cannot go in there. Why? Because that room isn't ours. He doesn't use it, he just sleeps. Amara. I know he can't hear me. No argument in it, just fact. But I talk to him anyway. Clara stared at her daughter. 4 years old, 0 filter, never once wrong about a person in her life. She stood up, picked up her mop, did not report it. She could not afford a report, could not afford questions, could not afford to explain why her daughter was in a restricted ward at 2 in the morning, because the honest answer was, the daycare closes at 6, my shift runs until 5, and the math does not work any other way. She mopped the floor outside room 714. She told herself she was moving to the next corridor in a minute. She stood there for 20 minutes. Queens, if you are new here, you walked in at exactly the right moment. I need to know where in the world you are watching from right now. Drop it in the comments because we are everywhere and I love knowing that. This channel is built for you. Subscribe right now and stay close, because what this little girl does in that room over the next 11 nights is going to set something in motion that nobody in this story is prepared for. Night 3, Clara stopped dragging Amara out. She stood in the doorway instead, told herself watching was different from allowing. She held that distinction for 2 more nights before she stopped believing it. Night 6, she came inside. Amara talked every night, unhurried, specific, unbothered by the silence she got back. The cartoon on Clara's cracked phone screen, the soup in the cafeteria that smelled like old socks, the boy at daycare who'd laughed at her favorite animal and been wrong about it. Clara listened from the corner. Night 8, Amara looked at the man and said, My mama's hands look different when she's tired. They get slower. A pause. She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep. Clara went still. I told him you came to Korea to build something, Amara continued, completely unaware of what she was landing. And now you just survive. The word hit the room and stayed there. Clara stood up. Time to go. I'm not finished. Amara. Amara looked at the man one last time. Good night, she said, sincere, patient. Clara walked out first, stood in the corridor with her back against the wall. She didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. She went back to work. Night 9, she straightened his blanket without planning to. One edge had slipped, her hands fixed it, and she stood there afterward looking at what she'd done. She left the room and didn't go back for the rest of the night. She understood that was a decision that had arrived 4 days too late. Night 11, she found Amara on the bed. Not the chair, the bed, curled up beside him, head near his shoulder, jacket pulled over herself, completely asleep. Clara stood in the doorway and felt every reasonable thought leave her body. She should move her, Pick her up, carry her out, never speak of it. She knew exactly what the correct response was. She pulled the chair to the corner and sat down. She watched her daughter sleep beside a dying man at 2:30 in the morning in Seoul, South Korea, in a city that did not know her name, in a country that had taken her savings and her plan and handed her a mop. At some point, she started humming. Not intentional, low, tuneless, the thing her mouth did when her hands weren't busy. Her mother used to do it. I'm still here. Everything is still okay. The monitors beeped. The IV dripped. The man did not move. Clara hummed in the dark and didn't notice she was doing it. And the story noticed for her. Day 14. Nurse Park caught Amara in room 714. Clara heard her name from the far end of the corridor in a voice not interested in keeping things quiet. Nurse Park, mid-40s, patience long expired, was holding Amara's hand with the energy of a woman delivering evidence. This child was inside room 714. I know. Do you understand what kind of patient is in that room? I understand he's protected. That room does not exist on the public ward sheet. It has its own security rotation, its own reporting structure. She looked at Amara, who looked back with complete composure. Your daughter has been inside it for 11 days. Nurse Kim's office, file folder on the desk, the silence doing its work first. Clara didn't fill it. Your contract is under review. I understand. Anything to say? My daughter isn't afraid of people. She wandered in because she saw someone who looked lonely and she doesn't know how to leave that alone. Level voice. I should have caught it sooner. I didn't. That's on me. Nurse Kim studied her. Reassigned to the 4th floor, 72 hours. Clara stood. Is he going to be okay? That's not information I can give you. She nodded and walked out. 6 in the morning, kitchen table, apartment quiet. Clara sat down, and her hand picked up a pen. Not a defense, not an apology. She wrote what actually happened, Amara, 11 nights, a little girl who decided a stranger mattered and couldn't be talked out of it. Near the end, she wrote, I don't know who this man is. I don't know what he's done or why there are 2 men outside his door every night. My daughter decided he mattered. She held his hand and talked to him every night for 11 nights like he was someone worth talking to. And she has never, not once in 4 years, been wrong about a person. She sealed it, went back to the hospital, took a detour through the restricted corridor, and slipped the letter under the door of room 714. She didn't knock. She didn't slow down. She walked. Day 15, early morning. Nurse Jae-young pushed open the door to room 714 without looking up from her chart. The monitor spiked. She looked up. It spiked again. She put her coffee down, hand shaking, reached for the call button and did not take her eyes off the bed because something had changed. The quality of the stillness had changed. Something was. His fingers were moving. She pressed the call button twice, hard. 3 nurses in the doorway. Then Dr. Cho, 61 years old, 20 years in neurology. The man who had written irreversible in the initial report. He walked to the bedside and stood there without speaking. On the bedside table, a sealed envelope, no name on it. He looked at the man, who was not supposed to be moving. He picked up the chart, found the word he'd written. He put the chart down and did not pick it up again. Queens, I need you to stay right here with me, because when this man finally opens his eyes, the first thing he asks for is not his empire, not his lawyers, not the name of whoever tried to kill him. Stay, because the next moment in this story is the one that reframes everything you've been watching. Jang Siwoo regained full consciousness on day 20. Kang Tae-jun was in the room in 4 minutes. Compact, still, the kind of man who refused to consider alternatives. He'd held the empire together on controlled force and 3 hours of sleep a night for 20 days. He stood at the foot of the bed and waited. Siwoo asked for water. Then he asked about the accident. Kang gave him a name and a location in 2 sentences. Siwoo processed it, nodded once. The lawyers looked at each other. The physician checked vitals. 4 minutes of silence. "The woman," Siwoo said, "and the child." Kang said, "Sir." "Night shift, restricted ward, cleaning staff." A pause. "There was a child who talked to me every night and a woman who hummed." He looked at the ceiling. "Find them." Kang found one name. Clara Moses, American national, contract worker, restricted ward, reassigned to 4th floor, day 14. No social profile, no local network, an apartment address and a phone that went to voicemail in 2 languages. He brought the folder to Siwoo. Siwoo read it, set it down. "Don't approach her." "Sir, if she's been seen near this room, she's already." "Leave her where she is." "I understand the words. I don't understand." "You don't need to." The tone that ended conversations. Kang left. Siwoo took the sealed envelope from the bedside table. "Read it." "Read it again." Put it in his coat pocket. He read it every day after that. Clara got the review result on a Tuesday. Agency woman, reading from a card voice. Written warning on file. Current assignment continues. No further action. Okay. She put the phone down. Amara was watching her over a spoonful of cereal. "Are we okay, Mama?" "We're okay." "I knew we would be." "How?" Amara considered this seriously. "Because you always figure it out." Clara looked at her daughter for a long moment. Something moved through her face she didn't have a name for. She turned back to the coffee she was making and said nothing else. The man appeared outside the daycare on a Wednesday. Clara turned the corner and registered him before she could have explained why. The stillness was wrong, too deliberate, placed rather than casual. He was watching the entrance. Then he was watching her. Then he was crossing toward her at a pace that was not threatening and not slow. "Ms. Moses." Amara's hand was already in hers. "I don't know you." "No, we have a mutual." "I said I don't know you." Level, quiet. "Step back." "Just a few questions. About your schedule. Specifically the restricted ward at." Clara turned and walked. Not running. Running was information. She moved at the pace of a woman with somewhere to be, through the indoor market 2 blocks over, out the other side, 2 more turns, building lobby, elevator, door locked behind her. She sat on the floor with her back against it. Amara stood in front of her with that focused, careful look she'd had since she was 2. "Mama." "We're fine. You look like the time the landlord came." "Come here." Clara pulled her in, held her. Her daughter's small, warm weight. Her invisibility, the thing she had built her entire existence here around, had cracked. She didn't know where. She didn't know why. She sat on the floor and held her daughter and said nothing. The following Tuesday, 4th floor, 2 a.m. Clara moved the mop in slow arcs and hummed under her breath and thought about nothing specific, which was the only kind of thinking available at this hour. She turned the corner toward the service elevator. A man was standing at the far end of the corridor. Not scrubs, not a white coat, dark street clothes expensive in the way that didn't announce itself. Tall, Korean, completely still, the bearing of someone used to rooms adjusting around them. He was looking directly at her. Clara stopped. The mop stopped. 15 feet of corridor, fluorescent light buzzing faintly. Neither of them moved. Visiting hours ended at 8. He didn't move. "Sir, are you lost?" "No." "Do you need help finding something?" A pause. "I already found it." Behind her, the break room door opened. Amara appeared, rubbing one eye, squinting. She saw Clara, started to speak. Then she saw the man at the end of the corridor. She went completely still. Not afraid. The opposite. Her face opened the way it did when she recognized something she'd been waiting for. "You're awake," she said. Clara felt the shape of everything forming in her mind, the architecture of it arriving slowly and then all at once. She looked at the man, at her daughter looking at the man looking at her daughter with an expression that had abandoned every attempt at control. "Who are you?" Jiang Siwu, a beat. Room 714. The corridor held that sentence. Clara looked at the man who had been lying motionless in a bed her daughter had been climbing into for 11 nights. Standing, present, alive in a way the monitors had only approximated, looking at her like she was the end of a very long search. I don't understand what you're doing here. I've been walking these corridors for 2 weeks. For what? You. Clara's expression didn't break. It did something layered and involuntary she couldn't fully control. She looked away for 1 second and looked back. I wrote that letter to the hospital, not to you. I know. I didn't think you could even. I know. He didn't fill the silence after that. You heard her. Every night, not everything, enough. A pause. I heard you too, humming every night. You don't notice you're doing it. Clara said nothing. Her face said everything she wasn't saying, and she knew it and didn't try to hide it. The letter is at my apartment. I've read it every day since I woke up. You were supposed to read it and let it go. I know. That's what people do. Yes. She looked at him steadily. There was a man outside my daughter's daycare last Wednesday. The crack in his expression was immediate, controlled so fast she almost missed it. Almost. You were approached. He knew my name. He asked about the restricted ward. Siwu reached for his phone. Stop. Quiet. It cut straight through his movement. Before you make a single call, tell me what I'm in the middle of. Because someone was outside my daughter's school, and you are standing in my corridor at 2 in the morning, and I have kept my head down in this city for 3 years. Tell me what just walked into my life. He looked at her. She looked back, frightened and not moving, which was not the same as not frightened. He told her, not everything, enough, the empire in the city's invisible architecture, the accident that was not an accident, the people who had not finished, the way proximity to him turned people into weapons. Clara stood with her mop in both hands and listened, and her expression moved through fear, then anger, then something that settled lower and colder than both. My daughter. I know. She is 4 years old. She held your hand because she thought you were lonely, and now someone is watching her school. I know. No deflection, no qualification. I'm going to fix that. You don't get to walk into my life and tell me what you're going to fix. She stopped, breathed. I rebuilt my life in this city twice, smaller each time. This is what I have left. This corridor, this job, my daughter in that room. I cannot afford for your world to touch mine. Siwu was quiet. It already did, he said. Not because of me, because your daughter sat down next to a dying man and decided he was worth talking to. She reached into my world, and I came back. A pause. I am trying to be careful with that. I am standing here instead of sending someone because I am trying to be careful with it. I heard you humming in the dark for 11 nights. I came back. And the first thing I asked for when I opened my eyes was you and your daughter. He stopped. I don't know what to do with that any more than you do. Clara looked at him. He was not performing. That was the thing that was hard to handle. He was not performing any of it. A man who had built an empire on calculated everything, standing in a hospital corridor with his composure visibly failing and his hands open. She picked up Amara. Amara settled into her arms, but kept her eyes on Siwu over Clara's shoulder. I don't know what any of this is, Clara said. Neither do I. That's not reassuring. No, he looked at her. It's honest. She held his gaze 1 more second. Then she walked to the elevator and pressed the button and stood with her back to him. I'll deal with whoever was watching the school, from behind her. Quiet. Not a promise designed to impress, something smaller and more careful than that. The elevator opened. Clara stepped in. The doors began to close. Amara raised her head from Clara's shoulder, looked back through the narrowing gap at the man alone in the corridor, hands at his sides, watching them leave with the expression of someone who had been moving toward something for a very long time. Mama, barely a whisper. What baby? He came back. The doors almost shut. I know. Because we stayed. The doors closed. Clara stood in the elevator, daughter warm against her shoulder, city dropping away below them floor by floor. She stared straight ahead and let those words sit where they'd landed. Because we stayed. She thought about 11 nights she hadn't meant to count, a letter she hadn't meant to send, a man who had walked 2 weeks of empty corridors to find the sound of her humming in the dark. She thought about every way she had made herself small enough to survive. And then, underneath all of that, quiet as anything. I didn't leave either. The doors opened. She walked through the lobby, through the sliding glass doors, into the soul night, cool and wide and lit up with names she still hadn't learned. She walked home. She didn't hum. She didn't need to. Queens. Clara walked out of that building carrying her daughter and something she didn't have a name for yet. And every single one of us understands why she got in that elevator. Why she kept her face straight and her voice steady and her daughter close. Because she has been surviving. And surviving doesn't leave room for something you can't control. But here is the question I cannot stop thinking about, and I need you in the comments right now. Did Clara make the right choice walking away? Or did she just leave the one person who has ever truly seen her standing alone in that corridor? And is that a mistake she's going to spend the rest of this story paying for? The comments on this one are going to be split down the middle, and I genuinely need to know where you stand before this story goes any further. And if this found you tonight, if it sat somewhere in your chest, send it to a woman who needs to hear it. You know exactly who she is. The one who is tired. The one who has been making herself small for too long. The one who would get in that elevator too. Subscribe and stay close, Queens. Because the next chapter of Clara and Siwoo is coming, and it is going to ask questions this episode didn't even know how to start. But that last line, because we stayed, that one is yours now.